welcome to Downshift. For those of you that are new, go ahead and hit that thumbs up button, hit the subscribe button, leave a comment, let me know what you think of the video. I'd love to hear from you. Today I'm in the 2018 Alfa Romeo Stelvio Quadrifoglio. If you've watched my video on the Giulia Quadrifoglio and my video on the Stelvio, you pretty much just combine those two videos, you know exactly what's going on already. But if you haven't watched those videos, go check them out for more in-depth. This will be kind of a culmination video of the two. And for those of you loyalists to the channel, you'll know that the Giulia Quadrifoglio is my favorite car that I've driven this year, so high hopes indeed for this Stelvio. Now this is the same power plant that you will find in the Giulia Quadrifoglio. This is 505 horsepower from that Ferrari California engine, that V8 that they lopped 2 cylinders off of, and they added 2 turbos. With the addition of the turbos, this makes about 35 PSI of boost from this 2.9 liter V6. It also makes 449 pound-feet of torque, and that's sent through a wonderfully snappy 8-speed ZF automatic transmission. Now, if you're waiting for me to complain about the manual transmission, oh Matt, you're an enthusiast, complain about the manual, and there's no 3-pedal format, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter. This is a fantastically quick and intuitive transmission. It's extremely responsive to all my inputs. It changes gear every time I want it to. It downshifts without hesitation. It's a fantastic transmission. I got no problem. I don't need 6 speeds. I don't need 3 pedals. Good transmission. Also, these massive aluminum paddles that I just absolutely love are column mounted where they should be. And yeah, they get in the way of the turn signal a little bit and the windshield wipers, but I really don't care. It adds to the character of the car. This is an Italian automobile. It's supposed to have quirks, so I love it. I love the paddles. Now I'm going to talk to you guys a lot about how this car is so similar to the Giulia Quadrifoglio, but it is important to remember that this is an SUV, and it is about 800 pounds heavier with the addition of obviously the SUV body and everything that goes along with that, but also the addition of all-wheel drive. Yes, this comes standard with Alfa Romeo's Q4 all-wheel drive, and that is the reason that this car gets to 60 quicker than the Giulia. This Stelvio Quadrifoglio is about 4,500 pounds, while the Giulia is about 3,700 to 3,800 pounds. So there's quite a significant weight difference. And if you're keeping track and if you care about fuel economy, you can expect to get about 17 mpg city and about 23 mpg highway. Now with it being 800 pounds heavier, what does that mean? Well, it means no more 0 to 60 in 3.8 seconds. I bet that's the point you're probably waiting for me to say, oh, it's going to be 0 to 60 in 4.1. No, this is actually quicker to 60 than the Giulia. This gets to 60 in about 3.3 seconds as tested by Motor Trend. I don't have a clock here, I didn't do my own test, but a lot of people are reporting it to be quicker. That is because of more weight on the wheels, and the all-wheel drive system gets it quicker off the line. This car goes from 0 to 30 in about 1.2 seconds, while the Giulia goes 0 to 30 in about 1.5 seconds. So it makes up a lot of time there as it's getting more traction on takeoff. Now this isn't a compact sedan, so the driving experience is going to feel a lot different. This is taller, this is a little bit more floaty, you get a lot more body roll as is the higher center of gravity with the sunroof and the taller body and everything, but it's not a totally different driving experience, which was very foreign to me. You still have the most direct steering available, and this is aided by Alfa's patented Alfa Link suspension, which I'll get into a little bit later. But you also have things like the fact that for this Quadrifoglio version, they've dropped the height of the Stelvio 2 inches and they've widened it about 1/2 inch to make it more aerodynamic and more planted in corners with a lower center of gravity. And it really does pay. Woo! The bolsters hold you in place real nice too. So in terms of dynamics, I'm shocked and appalled that they were able to get such a similar reaction and feel behind the wheel as they did with the Giulia, with something that's so much taller, it's got so much more weight. Really the only difference is a little bit more body roll up top, just because of the physics of having a taller vehicle. It really just feels like a Giulia in a baby high chair. That's what I feel like driving this thing. Everything is the same. Now this is an Alfa Romeo Quadrifoglio product, and as such you get the DNA drive modes with a race mode and adaptive dampers button. D, obviously dynamic. This is where it gets weird. N is natural, which would be like your comfort mode. And then A is advanced efficiency. Not eco pro or anything like that, advanced efficiency. I don't know who did this naming. I don't know if it's an Italian translation, whatever, but it's weird. It's not a big deal, but like it just seems weird. The most important thing that you need to know, however, is you want this car in race mode. You buy this car to have it in race mode. That is when you're going to get the burbles and the pops of the exhaust. That's when you're going to get the full kind of race car experience that you're paying for. It turns traction control off. It turns your front mitigation or front collision mitigation system off. It turns off all the driver aids, and it makes you focus on driving this car, which is what you really want to be doing if you get this car. Wait, turn it into race mode. This does have launch control, and I say launch control because it's really just planting your left foot on the brake, your right foot on the gas, and then letting go of the brake. It gets you to 60, like I said, in, let's say, average about 3.5 seconds, a little bit less, faster than you would in the Giulia. Hold on. There's that direct turn in. That's good stuff. You do get a little bit of turbo lag down low, right about at idle at really low RPMs, but that 35 PSI of boost comes in pretty quickly as the turbos spool up, and it does get you up to speed pretty quickly. It's not too noticeable, but there is a little bit off of idle. Now, with all this performance talk, you're probably wondering, okay, well, this is probably like a one-trick pony. This is just a performance SUV, and I can say happily that it's not. I mean, you have, you know, a natural or a comfort mode. You have an advanced efficiency or an eco mode. You have adaptive dampers that'll soften up. I personally will pretty much always leave these things in the soft damper mode. The hard dampers are really, really tight and make for a pretty bumpy ride, especially on streets. If you're gonna take this thing to the track, then go ahead, tighten them up. You're gonna want to. But for normal everyday driving, this is an SUV, you're gonna drive it every day, you're gonna want the dampers in soft mode. Also, the cabin refinement isn't what you would expect from the Germans. I still get a bit of road noise, but I think that's really attributed to the Pirelli PZero rubber, which you really have to have, wrangling all this power and putting it down on the road. So I really can't complain there, but you do get a little bit of cabin noise. Now, the worst thing about this car is the IBS, and no, it's not the irritable bowel syndrome, it is the intelligent braking system. I talked about this a lot during my Alfa Giulia video. It is the brake-by-wire. There's no physical connection between the brake pedal and the actual brakes itself. So the computer really does what it thinks is what you want to do as far as braking input. It pretty much always thinks you're 10/10ths on the track, and it's gonna like pound the brakes and you're gonna slam to a stop, which is fine when you are driving hard and you want to drive it track focused, and maybe you do take it to a track, and that's fine. But 90% of the time, this thing is going to be on a city street. 90% of the time, this is going to be driven on your way to work. And I really don't want to be pushed and jolted around by this computer thinking I'm driving this car on track and braking super hard into a turn. It's really my only gripe about this car as far as dynamics go. The brakes are a little touchy, but that's really it. Now, when it comes to the exterior, this is pretty similar to what you would get from a normal Stelvio, although there are some differences, obviously, with this being the Quadrifoglio. You have a redesigned front bumper with bigger air intakes and hood scoops that are actually effective in cooling the engine. You get 20-inch black wheels as standard and a nice offset quad exhaust. That is really one of the best things about this car. And then of course don't forget the little clovers on the front 3/4 panel. That's got an Alfa story lineage to it, so make sure you go check out that article on my website if you want to know more about the clover backstory. But like I said, they also made this Stelvio Quadrifoglio version 2 inches shorter and 1/2 inch wider to aid in cornering and bringing down the center of gravity. So that's one thing to note as well. It gives it a much more aggressive and mean stance. It looks a lot sportier than the tall, little, almost off-roady looking Stelvios. Now also, you do have staggered wheels. You have fatter rubber in the rear. This all-wheel drive system has a rear bias, so it's sending a lot of power to those back wheels, so we need really fat Pirelli PZeros in the back to wrangle all that power and put it down to the pavement. So that's one thing to note as well. You get skinnier rubber up front, fatter in the back. Now, this is an SUV, and as such, you get a big trunk in the back. And I use the term big a little bit loosely. You get about 18.5 cubic feet of cargo space in the back, which is not much. It's about 10 cubic feet less than competitors. Which is fairly significant, but you also do get a little secret compartment under the trunk floor where you have additional kind of pockets and cubbies for more stuff. The seats also split 40-20-40, and you can put those down and have a bit more space as well. So it's really livable, especially with the all-wheel drive, especially in Wisconsin here when it gets cold and snowy. You're going to want that all-wheel drive to get some traction down to whatever wheel you need. real good practicality, especially if you're looking for something similar to the Giulia, and this is so similar to the Giulia Quadrifoglio, with the practicality of a trunk and all-wheel drive. The interior and materials are largely the same as they are in a normal Stelvio. The biggest difference is the engine start-stop button on the steering wheel is red rather than black, just to remind you that you have 505 horsepower under your right foot and that you're faster than everybody else. Of course, there's a clover in the gauge cluster to remind you that you're faster than everybody else as well. Alfa doesn't want you to forget that, especially when you're paying $80,000. And of course, you also get carbon fiber inserts on your dash, and by your gear selector, you get red stitching on the seats, you get Alcantara on the seats, and red stitching on the dash and everything like that. It is a nice cabin. The materials aren't what you would expect from a German, but they are nice. 8.8-inch infotainment screen. It's the same as in the normal Stelvio. The panoramic sunroof is fantastic and a $1,500 option. I absolutely do recommend you get it because it makes the cabin feel a lot bigger and more open, and it shows off that red stitching, especially in the back. It's not the biggest back seat, but with the panoramic sunroof, you really do get a more open and airy feeling, lending to a less claustrophobic environment. Now, what you can expect from your technology and safety suite is about passive lane keep assist. Again, this is the same thing in my Stelvio video that I talked about earlier. It has passive lane keep assist, and it beeps at you when you start crossing over into other lanes, but I wish it would really just jiggle the steering wheel or vibrate or do something else less audible to let you know that you're changing lanes. Also, there's adaptive cruise. As far as the technology and safety suite, it's not what you would call segment leading, but this isn't a BMW. It's not focused on the technology. The biggest thing that you're going to get out of this car is the dynamics, and this is the fastest SUV around the Nürburgring. Its counterpart, the Giulia, fastest sedan around the Nürburgring. You buy this car because of the engine and the handling and the dynamics and everything like that. You don't buy it because of the technology suite. You don't buy it because you want it to drive itself. You buy it because you want to drive it and you want to be engaged in an Italian automobile. Now, like I said, if you are looking to get into a Stelvio Quadrifoglio, you can expect to pay at minimum $80,000. Add $1,500 for pano roof, $1,500 for driver assistance package. You can get custom paint, you can get custom brake calipers, custom wheels. I think you get yellow and or red brake calipers. You can spend up to $10,000 on exterior paints and color options and things like that. So you can quickly approach $90,000 to $100,000 on this thing. So it's not cheap. However, if you do look at its competitors, the Mercedes GLC 63 is a bit cheaper, but you do get 50 less horsepower. Now, with something like the Porsche Macan, that's similar power, but you're going to pay at least 6 figures to begin. So is a Stelvio really that expensive? Okay, yeah, it is. But I would rather have this thing over the Porsche or the Mercedes any day. There's just something special about it. That's why I like the Giulia Quadrifoglio. That's one of my favorite cars that I've driven this year. That's why this thing is pretty much exactly the same as that thing. It's one of my favorite SUVs. This is the reason that I like SUVs. It's a fantastic car dynamically. Pros: the engine and exhaust combo are a reason to buy this car flat out. It's unlike anything you've ever driven before. If you don't believe me, drive one, you'll be convinced immediately. Dynamically, this thing is somehow so incredibly similar to the Giulia. I don't understand the physics of it at all, but they did an amazing job tuning this car. It feels so tossable and light, despite being 4,500 pounds and an SUV that's got a tall center of gravity and a huge piece of glass up top. Also, it's got all-wheel drive and storage and practicality for a real, true daily driver. And finally, I just really love the looks of this thing. You can get an X5 or an X3 M40i. You can get an SQ5, whatever, but it doesn't look special. This thing looks special. It commands attention as it drives down the road. It really is a beautiful and fantastic automobile. Now, cons. Really, my biggest con is just the intelligent braking system. The brake-by-wire is just too aggressive for daily driving. It's not my favorite. It would become a little irritating after a while, so that's really my biggest concern. The infotainment isn't the most intuitive, but there is a learning curve. You get used to it pretty quickly. Interior materials aren't what you would expect for something that's nearing $100,000. It's not to say it's bad, but it's just not what you would expect from an Audi or a Mercedes or something like that. And to go along with that, you get a little bit of road noise. I wish there would be a little bit more isolation in the cabin, but that's the Pirelli PZero tires. It's not that bad. So ultimately, yeah, it's a fantastic car. It's a fantastic Italian car. It has some quirks. The paddles get in the way a little bit. It doesn't have the most storage. It's a little stiff, but that's the point. It's an Italian car. It's got faults. It's got characteristics, you know, and character to it. So absolutely love this car. I hope you guys enjoyed this review. If you did, please leave a comment, subscribe, hit that like button. Let me know what you guys thought. I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye.